welcome to Career Center. I'm Kimberly White, Executive Director of the Community Career Center, a resource center located in Naperville for people in career transition. Career Center will bring human resource professionals and other experts together to provide job search tips to assist you as you search for your next success. Later on Career Center, technology recruiter Paul Cameron will join me, but first, I'm happy to have instructor and job coach John McCarthy on the show. John, welcome.
Thank you very much.
It's so good to see you here in this venue versus at the Community Career Center.
Yeah, a little bit different.
A little bit different.
Yeah.
So, John, before we delve into our questions, I'd love for you to share with our audience a little bit about you and your background and what you've done in the past.
Yeah, actually, I feel like I've kind of come full circle in what I do. I started as a public school teacher, did that for about 5 years, and then got into sales. I sold pharmaceuticals, and then eventually I got moved up the corporate ladder, so to speak, in sales and marketing with several medical companies. And my last full-time position was with a company in the Chicago area, a medical device company.
Okay.
And I ran the North America division, but my very favorite position was as head of global training and development. And that led naturally to the kind of volunteer work I do now.
Hence, you're volunteering here at the Community Career Center as well as Career Place.
Yeah. Right.
Great. So I know at the Career Center you do a couple of workshops for us. Answering the tough questions and interview skills. Let's focus a little bit on both of those. Tell us a little bit about interviewing skills.
Interviewing skills is really kind of the basic course where we spend a lot of time interactively helping the folks to formulate some basic responses to questions that are likely to come up. One of the most important ones is, tell me about yourself. We give people a chance to formulate some responses and then to practice them and get feedback, and that's really how people learn. So that's the essence of interviewing skills, and that's really a half-a-day class we do.
Because you have the job seekers spend some time on doing some hands-on stuff.
Exactly. Exactly right.
Okay. And then answering the tough questions?
Yeah, the tough questions is something that are always on people's minds, and the idea there is, as kind of a sequel to learning some basic interview skills and practicing those things, is, all right, now how do I get ready to handle those questions that I'm worried about or that maybe I've been asked in the past and I didn't have a good answer for? So we have kind of a master list of those questions, and we ask people, pick those, which of those might give you trouble or have, and let's focus on that as a group, and we'll come up with at least some good ideas for how to respond to those questions calmly in a relaxed way so you don't get flustered.
How much time should someone spend preparing for an interview?
That's a good question. There are a lot of steps to it. For any given interview, I would think a person's going to need to spend a couple of days. Now, they've already done some preliminary work on their basic story, but they really need to learn a lot about the company, for example, the job description, things like that.
Overall, what's the most important thing a job seeker should keep in mind when they're going through this?
I think there are kind of two things, really, and there may be more. The first one is, and it's amazing how many people are not ready for this one, and that is, have your story together. I'm not talking about a lengthy, 5 or 10 or 20-minute story. I'm talking about if someone asks you anything about what you do, have something to say. In other words, how do you talk about yourself? What do you call yourself professionally?
Now, this is separate from like their elevator speech. You want to do a little bit more.
It actually is it intersects with the elevator speech, yes, very much. So it's, what do I do professionally? What am I really good at? And what am I looking for? That's the basis of it.
And they should be able to rattle that off.
Absolutely, because that's important not only for interviewing, that's important when they network looking for opportunities.
Now, you mentioned earlier about the question, tell me about yourself. Is that the question everybody should be prepared for?
Absolutely.
Or is there something else?
Absolutely. And again, the first time you ask people that, many people will just ramble all over the place. Well, yeah, my favorite puppy was so-and-so when I was 6 years old, and I majored in whatever, and then I did this and that. That's fine, but when you're asked that question by an interviewer, you want to have a well-organized answer. And you want it to not only to be well thought out, but you want it to emphasize what are the 2 or 3 key things about me that make me a potentially strong candidate for this position.
What are some things you should avoid saying or talking about? You mentioned, like, should you tell them about your cute, adorable, pet at home, or what's too much to share?
Well, the essence of a tell me about yourself response, I believe, ought to focus on the professional aspect. Sometimes the interviewer wants to know a little bit about you, but perhaps one sentence or two, maybe where I grew up or where I went to college, or something in my background that helped lead me to the kind of work I do today. That's enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, too, when you're preparing for that interview, if you find out that interviewer has gone to, say, Penn State, and that's where you went to school, bring that up, right? Or talk about that.
Absolutely. And the same thing applied when I was selling pharmaceuticals. They'd say, look around the office. If so-and-so is a Notre Dame fan or whatever, it's okay to chat about that. You just don't want to get distracted by that.
Right, right. Any other questions that you think someone should just be prepared and know exactly what they need to say?
Yeah, well, the tell me about yourself would include not only who I am professionally and a little bit of personal, but what are a couple of career highlights along my progression in my career that, again, help underscore why I'm a good fit for the position I'm interviewing for today. That's really the key. Again, it's another way to tell my story in brief.
Yeah. I've heard different things on this, but when you're being interviewed, I've heard some say it's okay to take a moment, if you're asked a question, to take 10, 15 seconds. Think about it before you answer. What's your advice there?
Absolutely. Rather than blurting out something if you're really not ready to handle it, I always think it's a good idea to take a pause. That's what accomplished public speakers do. And it makes a lot more sense to know what you want to say, and to even say as a filler in space, that's a really good question. Let me think about that, and then go ahead.
And that's a good thing to do.
I think so. It shows you really care about the answer you're going to give.
Right, right. So how should one get prepared for that interview? You mentioned earlier there's different steps. Can you kind of go through that process?
Sure. There are two or three key things. I think the first one is, when you know what the company is, do your homework. Do as much research as you can about that company, not only on their website, that's great. Talk to anybody you can find, whether it's electronically, whether it's networking, somebody you know, a neighbor, whatever, what it's like to be at that company. What are that company's hot buttons, if you will, or priorities? Find out everything you can. Because it could well be that in the interview, they're going to ask you, hey, why do you want to work for us? So that's key. Do your homework.
Do your homework.
Probably the most basic is go over the job description. Because your job in the interview is going to be, okay, I got to pick the key things about that job description that are their needs and how I can best fill them. So it's almost a matching exercise. On the board, I draw the old accounting T-chart, where this side is the job and what they're looking for. The other side is me. So it's how do I match what they want?
Yeah, and that's critical.
Absolutely.
Is there something that you should also be looking to that's going to make you be unique? Because once they bring you in for an interview, they are probably bringing in 5, 6, 7, 8 other people. So what is one thing someone can look for to make them unique or stand out?
That's really important, and we teach that even in the early stages of preparing your job search. Not only what am I good at, but what makes me different from other people, because you're right. They're going to be talking with other people who are just as good at this or that. So it can be found in what other people have said about me in my previous jobs. Maybe a boss said something like, you're the best ever at this. Or a colleague said, wow, I really admire the way you do that. Those kinds of things, if you can pick up on those, that could help you differentiate yourself from the other people who are interviewing for the same job.
Yeah, that's some great advice. One that I struggle with, or I also know that some of our job seekers struggle with, is the failures and weaknesses. How do you address that?
Yeah, the people do struggle with that, and they're afraid of it. And the important thing is, just think it through ahead of time and have something to say that is not made up off the cuff. And when people ask, what are your weaknesses? First of all, don't give them a list of 17 weaknesses.
That would not be good.
Come up with something that, and by the way, this is just my advice to clients. I would never want to say my name and the word weakness in the same sentence. I would say, well, something that I have struggled with or something that has given me trouble in the past is, make it be real, but then when you answer the question honestly, for example, maybe it's, well, sometimes I get in people's faces if they're not doing what they're supposed to do. Don't stop there.
Right.
The key is to refocus. And to go from there to, well, in that case, when I struggle with this, here's what I've learned from that. Here's what I do now to avoid that issue. And ultimately, the implication is, here's why I'm now a stronger person because of it. So that's key. Don't ever stop just with answering the question. Go on, refocus to something strong about me.
And what about those folks that may say, well, I have no failures. There's nothing, I'm strong in every area. Will that person be considered for a job?
I think if I'm the hiring manager, I'm going to find that pretty hard to believe. I'm also going to think that, has that person really thought it through? So it's not that none of us are perfect. I know at times in my youth I thought I was close, but I wasn't. And it shows, A, that you're honest and you're willing to be frank, and B, that you learned from your mistakes or whatever it might have been.
And then wrapping up the interview, how does one do that?
One thing that we always emphasize to all of our clients is this. Here's a question that if you cannot answer, don't go on the interview. And the question is, why should we hire you? Now, it seems basic, but people need to be ready to provide that little summary statement at the end to reinforce to the hiring manager or whomever, this is why I'm a really good fit for this job. So that's the critical thing. And by the way, the answer to that is very similar to what I should have been talking about throughout the interview. What are my greatest strengths that make me a good fit for the job?
And it shouldn't be rehearsed. It should be something, you practice, but then throw in something from that interview.
Absolutely, especially like you might say, well, as we talked about earlier, I hope I've demonstrated to you that this is one of my real strong points, and then you wrap it up. One of the other things about wrapping up an interview, and you know this, often the hiring manager will say, well, all right, let me give you a couple minutes to ask me questions. So always have a nice, tight list of questions you would want to ask that are thoughtful, right? Not like, well, how much vacation do I get?
Right. But, that would not be good either.
But questions like for the boss, well, what do you see as the key priorities for your team going forward? Something like that.
Well, we are out of time. This has been very informative. Thank you.
You're entirely welcome.
So you have heard of computer hacks? Well, up next, technology recruiter Paul Cameron to discuss job search hacks. We'll be right back after these important public service announcements.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Good things happen at the Forest Preserve District of DuPage County. Experience more than 25,000 acres where native plants and animals make their home. Discover the scenic beauty of over 60 forest preserves containing forests, prairies, and wetlands. Explore the wonder of changing seasons along 145 miles of trails. Get outside and discover the good things that happen when you visit DuPage Forest Preserves. The Forest Preserve District of DuPage County, where good things happen.
I just moved in with this family, and it's embarrassing. The little one, he likes to go outside and crawl around in the giant litter box. I don't know what he's doing. Oh, poop already. You're making me nervous.
Welcome back to Career Center. I'm Kimberly White, and joining me on the show is technology recruiter Paul Cameron. Paul is president of DriveStaff, Inc., a contract and direct hire placement firm. Paul, welcome.
Thank you.
So good to see you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you. So, Paul, before we go into job search hacks, I'm excited to talk about that. Let's talk a little bit about you and Drive Staff and technology and.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I've been a technology recruiter or headhunter, if you will, for about 20 years now. Believe it or not, I hate to say that out loud, but doing it a long time. So basically, as a headhunter, my job is to go out and find people for the open positions that my clients have. And there's right now an abundance of positions out there in the Chicago area, so it's a good time in job search. I'm also a career coach for those who we can't place. So while we'll place a certain percentage per month, there's a lot more that we don't get to place. So I do a lot of coaching for them in terms of how to find new positions, and that kind of thing. So I've got a secondary business called speedupmyjobsearch.com to help them in terms of finding new positions and being on their way.
Great. So Speed Up My Job Search is not necessarily just for technology jobs, for all jobs, correct?
Correct, yes, because we'll get people who apply to jobs from all different industries, whether they're technology or not, like security. I've got a lot of IT security positions right now, so anybody in IT security, please check out our site. But we'll get a lot of security guards that'll apply, or security personnel for different companies. And we want to try to help everyone who comes to us.
And when you mentioned Chicagoland, so your jobs are all over the Chicagoland, right?
Yes.
And do you also have jobs outside of Chicago, outside of the city?
We do. So a lot of our companies that are headquartered here in Chicago will have positions. Like I've got one that's located in their global headquarters are in Schaumburg, but I've got positions in Massachusetts, in Michigan, in California, all over the place. Texas.
So technology, for sure, you need to look up you and speedupmyjobsearch.com for other types of jobs and everything.
And we've got about 2,000 jobs posted there on Speed Up My Job Search right now.
Wow. Okay. So, that's good news for job seekers.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yep.
All right. So, I was talking at the end of the previous segment about computer hacks, because everybody's heard about computer hacks, but job search hack, what is that?
Right.
Where did that come from?
I'm glad you asked that question, because I was thinking, she's going to think I'm a job search hack. What I'm getting at is, so I'm kind of obsessed with those life hacks. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, where it's like things like if you get in an elevator, for example, and you want to go to the 33rd floor and you don't have time to stop at all those different things. If you press your floor number and the door close button at the same time, it's an express elevator to your floor.
I didn't know that.
There you go. That would be a hack. There you go. Just little things like that that are like hacks to do life better and faster. So I've kind of applied that concept to the job search process.
Okay. So what is a quick and easy way to find more jobs?
Okay. Quick and easy way to find more jobs. So if you're on LinkedIn, for example, do a quick search for people who do what you do in your area. So a lot of people say, well, I'm an iPhone developer. So how many iPhone developer jobs are there out there? So look for iPhone developers in your area, looking for people, not companies. And then when you have your list of people, open up all their profiles to see which companies hired them to be an iPhone developer. And that's a great target list of companies to go after. And the other thing you'll find is that a lot of them title themselves a little bit differently, like an iOS engineer or a mobile developer. Run that same search. Yeah, and you come up with lots of companies you've never heard of that hire whatever it is you do. Again,
another great tip or hack.
A little hack, right.
So that's a really good way to come up with target companies.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
I would have never thought of that.
All right.
All right, networking. Number one way to find a job.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
How can you hack networking?
So, a couple of ways. First, specifically using technology. But, the purpose of networking, the best thing you need to do with networking is you're trying to build relationships, right? Your goal of a networking event is not to just walk out with as many business cards as you can get to make a collage with them later. Your goal is to create relationships. And the best way to create relationships is through the follow-up, right? So you need to be following up with all these people that you've met over time, a couple weeks later, a month later, 3 months later, which some people see as kind of a hassle. Well, what if you get home and you immediately write them an email to do whatever it is you said you would do for them? Hey, I told you I'd send you that article, here it is. But then write them another email in the context of a month later hey, Kim, I hope you remember me. We met last month on the TV show. And it's really great. Really appreciate the time there. And just wanted to check in with you about this. I saw this one thing you'd be interested in. And there's a feature in almost every email client out there called delay delivery. So if you use this, you write the email from a month from now while everything's still fresh in your head. And then you use the delay delivery feature and BCC yourself so you know that it's someone you don't, they reply like, who's this? Right, but you use that and do another one for 3 months down the line and 6 months down the line. That will do your follow-up for you so you don't have to think about it anymore and you stay in touch and build these relationships.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
That's key.
Yeah. And so do you recommend going a month out versus like a week out, like a month and 3 months? Like, kind of what's your...
Yeah, so personally, I do like a month out and 3 months out, but it's going to depend. I mean, if you're looking for a position, maybe you want to do a week out. Maybe you want to, you determine those lengths yourself, but write the emails now while you still remember what you talked about and why it's important to stay in touch with that person.
Okay, so hacking networking. I'm catching on to what we're doing here. So interviewing.
Okay.
There's a way, I'm assuming.
Lots of ways. Lots of ways. So one in particular that I have created is it's like a document that you can use if you bring it with you to your interview. So what you want to do is you want to take a screenshot of their website, whomever this is. All right, and you're going to put it on the top half of this document. And by the way, I created a special page for anybody watching this. It's speedupmyjobsearch.com/career center. I have the document there. You can have this. It's free.
Great.
So print this thing off, and you're going to put their website, a screenshot of their website at the top half of the page. The bottom half of the page is going to be notes and questions, and you put that right on there. Notes and questions, big and bold. All right, and the reason you're doing this is not so that you can take the piece of paper out and say, hey, look, I printed off your website. You don't want to do that. But if I'm interviewing with your company, if you've been there for more than a month, you know what your website looks like, right? You're going to recognize it instantly. So I say, hey, would you mind if I took some notes? And I take out my document, I put it on my lap to take notes. Even though it's upside down, you're going to recognize, she printed out my website. This person is organized. They are got questions for me. They've got their research done about it. So they've got all this stuff together. And then across the bottom, I've got 5 little boxes. And they're all very, very generic things like a good commute and nice facility and good people and I can learn and grow and the X factor, that kind of thing. Just 5 little boxes, generic things across the bottom. As the interview closes, you ask your questions, you've taken notes, you've printed off their website. This is all impressive stuff. You close the interview by saying, do you have any other questions for me? And you can come back and say, well, I've got 5 criteria that I've been looking for in just my ideal employer. And I got to tell you, I've checked all 5 of my boxes here. So I hope that you think this is went as well as I did, because I would love to work here.
And do you share what's matched with the criteria?
If they'll ask. That usually baits a question. But it's like it's evidentiary proof that you're interested in the position. And the best way to get somebody interested in you is to be interested in them. And
we were talking earlier with my first guest about how you stand out, what makes you unique. This is a great idea.
Yeah. So they ask you, how do you set up a page parameter or an XYZ technology, and you have no idea what that is. So instead of giving them the answer that most people give, which is, hey, I'm not familiar with that particular technology, but I'm a quick learner, right? Which is, okay, that's nice. That's what everybody's saying, but I guess I got to take your word for it, right? So why not give them a step or two of how you would learn it, right? And what you would do to learn it so they can see how you're a quick learner. And if you have any kind of a competitive advantage, you're a member of a professional association for that industry, or you've taken a certification, you still have the manuals, or you've got people that you can contact to get answers quickly. Well, now you can say to them, like, well, I'm not familiar with that particular technology, but when I get faced with something like that, the first place I always turn, I'm a member of this professional association, the XYZ professionals of the world. And I reach out to them, and those guys are great about giving me answers very, very quickly. And that's how I can get up to speed faster than a lot of people. And what the hiring manager is going to see, number one is how you learn quickly, but number two is they're going to hear you say, I've got access to all this extra knowledge over here. So the hiring manager hears, okay, if I hire this person, now I'm going to have access to that other group that I don't have access to. And now you're a more valuable hire because you're going to give them access to, to somewhere else.
That's great. Another great tip.
Right. So.
All right. So social media. You can hack social media too?
Easy. Absolutely. There's a hack for everything, Kim. And if I'm going on too much here, stop me.
No, we have just a couple more minutes, but I'd love to hear about social media hacking.
Okay.
I think.
So the big thing with social media, a lot of people will tell you, and you get the career advice in the books and things, and they'll say, one thing you want to do with social media is to constantly be posting relevant articles for what you do, because that way your name gets in front of everybody, and you get opportunities to start conversations with people. And the pushback I hear from that is, well, I don't have time to be constantly at my computer and posting articles and all this stuff. So very easy. First of all, if you need articles to post, there's a wonderful site called Feedly.com.
Feedly.
Feedly.com. If you need an article about anything, go to Feedly.com. You meet somebody at that networking event and you say, hey, I'll send you an article later. Go to Feedly.com, put in whatever it is you need an article about. It'll feed you something about that thing. And then if you find an article that you like, you're going to use a site called Buffer.com, which is also free. And what that does is you pick, multiple times throughout the week that you want to post stuff. So Monday at 7, Saturday at noon, whatever. And those are your times. So you find an article that you like, you say, add to my buffer. You find another one, add to my buffer, add to my buffer. It just throws it in a queue. And when your post times come along, it's automatically going to post them across whatever medium you want. LinkedIn or Twitter or Facebook or Google Plus. It posts automatically. If you're connected to me, I post a lot.
Yes.
Okay. So
it's a good thing.
But I use that. I use automated features that post this stuff automatically for me.
Wow. Very good. We need to get you back over to the center and do a workshop.
I would love to.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Job search hacks.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much, Paul, for being on the show. I also want to thank John McCarthy for joining me on this month's edition of Career Center. And to our television audience, if you're unemployed, underemployed, or seeking a career change, visit the Community Career Center at 1815 West Diehl Road, Suite 900 in Naperville, or search us on the web at www.communitycareercenter.org to learn more about the resources available to you as you search for your next success. Thank you so much for watching.